So whether he likes it or not, here's what's going to be the case for Anthony Albanese. They said this before the election.
We've said we have no intention of making any super changes.
Major changes? Biggest changes in 30 years? They said this before the election.
What about superannuation? Would there be any changes to the superannuation rules?
Australians shouldn't expect major changes to superannuation if the government changes hands.
What do major changes mean? What about things like catch-up contributions? They still be allowed?
We haven't proposed it. We haven't proposed any changes to that, David.
And you won't?
Unlikely to.
So Grim Jim's going to learn a lesson. When you make a promise and you've got the Story Bridge behind you, you better make sure that you're actually going to deliver on it. Otherwise, this will be how famous that grab becomes.
There will be no carbon tax under the government I lead.
Or this one from Tony Abbott, which of course he got beaten around the head about because he said...
And no cuts to the ABC.
And of course the ABC didn't get a cut. They just didn't get extra money. We didn't get a carbon tax, we got a floating price on carbon. And we're not getting any changes to superannuation, apart from being forced to pay tax that you currently don't have to pay tax on. Joe Hildebrand is here to talk about this and a whole lot more, along with the lovely Erin Molan. Dare I say, you are playing an away game right now, Joe.
Yes.
They said it.
Yes,
they did the speech.
Yep.
They put it on the table. And isn't it amazing that every single reporter who reported on this misunderstood their message?
It's incredible, isn't it? Yeah, look, very clearly Jim Chalmers has put it on the table. I think he actually makes a pretty compelling case, but what you can't do is pretend that black is white and pretend that, this is not actually a major change, when in fact you're talking about overhauling the entire system so that it's not more in tax concessions than it is for the aged care pension. That is about as big a major change as you can get.
So advocate the change,
so
but advocate the promise
advocate the change. That's what I would do. I'd do what Howard did with the GST, and take it to the next election. And I think they'll probably win an increased majority at the next election.
And why didn't they? Because of what happened to Bill Shorten in 2019. Because they knew self-funded retirees 2019 that their accountants were telling them, oi, these guys are going to change something. So what did they do? Exactly the same as climate policy. You do Bill's policy, but you just sell it as somebody else's.
It's just duplicitous, and it doesn't matter how compelling a case it is. There is no way this was not on the agenda prior to the election. There is absolutely no way. They are telling porcupines, and the use of their language, it's not clever, it's sneaky, and it is so obvious to every single Australian what is occurring here. The Prime Minister, the Treasurer, could shut this down in 5 seconds if they wanted to. If they were not planning on doing what we all suspect they're planning on doing, not conservative media, not right-wing media, the ABC, Nine newspaper, Nine News, every single person has the exact same take on what's occurred. They could come out and shut it down straight away. There's a reason they haven't, and we'll all find out shortly why.
But also what they're learning here, right? And Grim Jim is learning now what Josh Frydenberg has felt, what Peter Costello has felt, what every Treasurer has always felt when Scott Morrison was the same with Malcolm Turnbull, which is you are there to go and float the balloons for the Prime Minister to then go away and pop. Remember a few months ago about stage 3 tax cuts? All the rest
exactly.
But what is dangerous here is, I think, the political arrogance to suggest we won so big last time with the lowest vote since 1930. We're going to win so big next time because the voice is going to happen and everyone wants a Republican the second term, and who could ever go back to those evil Liberals? The point is, if you are confident in a win, and I don't know whether this would have changed it, but if you're confident of a win, be confident to say, some big things need to change.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think, look, the thing with the stage 3 tax cuts and with this, and it was the exact same thing that I was going to bring up because it is the obvious point. Partly, I think it's about managing expectations. So the stage 3 tax cuts was floated just ahead of the budget at the end of last year, which is basically to manage expectations. Say, look, times are really, really tough. They're so bad that we've had to start looking at this. And everyone says, no, don't do this. And it's okay. We've listened to the people. We're not going to do that. But that, just so you know, that's how close it got. And this, I think, is a slightly different conversation, as they say. But again, I think it could be a
national conversation.
I think this could.
You're going to say that we can have a national conversation.
Well, I think it could be no changes. The word major, that he said no changes. We're focusing on major.
No,
we said no major. No, you said no.
That's done. I'll be home by midnight, and you're back home 2 days later.
And I know you're on the pokies too.
I think you have to be careful. And again, no matter how compelling each of these arguments is, the problem is that if you break a promise, and everyone understood it to be a promise on both the stage 3 tax cuts and this, if you break a promise on this, it doesn't matter how compelling the argument for this particular policy is. It means the public is never going to believe you next time. And when you go to an election promising X, Y and Z, red, yellow and blue, and you go out there and say, we'll do this. We'll say, well, you said that about the tax cuts. You said that about not touching.
And the truth is, the most ardent Abbott and Gillard fans would both tell us they didn't break their promise because, no, it wasn't about tax, it was about floating. It wasn't about...
People hate that. People hate that. And those sorts of idiots are doing more harm to the party than good.
They got the play, and I think we may well rack them up many a night and push them through.